Hello, my friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Party Nerds Podcast. We are coming to you live from a triple secret location high in the Hollywoodland Hills area of Los Angeles, California. I'm Richard Gabai with my pal Robert Carradine. Please subscribe and hit like. We would really appreciate that. This is a very special show, and I want to come right out and say this is the most meaningful and special show that we've made in this series so far to me personally. Because today we have on the program a real life superhero, but a real life superhero in my life, the legendary Mr. Burt Ward. And I just want to give a little preamble, because when I was a little kid, my dad took my brother and I to in Manhattan to a theater where they were doing a screening of the Batman and Robin movie. And Burt and Adam were making an in-person appearance. And you have to understand that they weren't actors, it was Batman and Robin. And my brother David would play Batman when we were kids, and I would be Robin. So my dad held me up over his shoulders so that I could just catch a little glimpse of Burt running on stage and being Robin, and it was the biggest thrill of my childhood. And so now, all these years later, to not only have worked together, but to have become great friends, it just really, really means a lot. Burt, it's so great to see you.
Hello, citizens.
Amazing.
Yeah, here we are in Gotham.
You guys are the dynamic duo, huh?
That's us.
We're a different kind of dynamic duo, but I mean, to be a part of something so iconic, tell us how that, I mean, you've told others before, but it's fresh every time, and I want to hear it on our program. When young Burt became Robin, how did that all go down?
Well, I was in college at UCLA. I was in my third year. I was studying acting both at UCLA and with a professional coach, one of the great method acting teachers. His name was Eric Morris.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was selling real estate for my father on the weekends to help him out. My father was one of the top 3 real estate brokers in Beverly Hills. And on the weekends, I would go in what they call sit-on houses, where you basically are there during the day and people come in, you hand out brochures if they're looking to buy a house. And this one particular Saturday, a very respected film producer named Saul David and came in to look at at that particular house. I wasn't aware of who he was. I just, in talking with him, I kind of make small talk, what business are you in? And then we got talking, and I don't know where I got the nerve to do it, but I said, would you be willing to watch a scene? And he's like, well, okay, yeah. So I just impromptu, just did a scene for him, for a few minutes. And he said, that's actually pretty good. And I said, well, I want very much to be an actor. And I was thinking that maybe I'd start by getting some extra work. He said, no, you don't want to do that, because if you become a screen extra, that will pigeonhole you, and that's where you'll stay. He said, let me send you to an agent who maybe they can help you out a little bit. I said, well, thank you very much. And he made arrangements. I called the agent. The agent saw me and went to see the agent. The first thing he said was, I can't get work for the actors I've got. I would never take anybody new. But because Saul David called me and asked me, I'm going to take you. But don't expect to work for a year. And if you do get one job, you might get a sentence and a walk-on. I said, okay, and I left there kind of like with my tail between my legs, so to speak, got brought down a few notches. It was a couple of weeks later that I got a call from, I guess the secretary in his office said, there's something going on over at 20th Century Fox. Can you be there tomorrow at 4:30? We got a drive-on pass for you. And I said, sure, happy to. So the next day I went there, and they let me park on the lot, and they sent me to a bungalow. And, in the bungalow were a bunch of other young actors, all probably close to my age. And it was my turn. I went in and I saw the casting director, and he asked me a couple of questions and then said, would you like to meet the executive producer? And I said to myself, well, of course. I mean, doesn't everybody get to meet the executive producer? Well, I didn't know that. No, the answer is no, they don't, but I didn't know that. So he sent me to another bungalow in a different part of the lot. And I went there and there was nobody. Instead of all these young guys there, like where I had just been, there was like nobody in there except for a secretary at the desk. And, she looked up and a couple of minutes went by. She said, "Oh, Mr. Dozier will see you now." I said, "Okay." So now you got to understand that I had never tried out for anything. I'd studied for years. So it wasn't like I didn't know, acting and understand craft, and stuff like that. But I hadn't been on an actual interview. So therefore, I hadn't been turned down. And when you haven't been turned down and rejected, which takes a lot out of anybody, because remember, it's not like you're selling brushes, and they don't like your brush. I mean, you're the product. And if somebody doesn't like the product is you. So, and it, brings actors down, But anyway, I just walked in and I said, "Hello, sir." And I shook his hand and he was like, "Oh my gosh," put him back about a foot. He wasn't expecting that. And he looked at me for a minute. He says, "Well, I don't know." He says, "You're kind of tall for the part." I said, "Oh, but sir, I promise you, I won't grow anymore." And he laughed like, who could promise that, right? Who could promise? And he said, "Well, I guess you've been doing roles between 15 to 17." And yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, technically, I had an acting class, but not on television or in film, but in acting class. So I did tell the truth, but kind of a left-handed way of saying it. And he said, "Well, would you like to do a screen test?" I said, "Sure." I mean, doesn't everybody? I didn't say that to him, but I thought that. Well, no, no, not everybody gets a screen test because in those days, a screen test was done on 35 millimeter film. You got to have a crew, you got to have a director, you got to have cameramen, you got to have gaffers, lighting people. I mean, you got to have makeup. I mean, you got to have the whole thing. So it was I guess a week or two later, I got called in, and when I went in, which by the way, my interview is on tape and on YouTube. People can see my actual the tryout for the role. And the first thing I did, they wanted to see if I was athletic, and now this is 1965. And I had been studying karate for a while, which only came into the United States in 1959. So most people had never even heard of it. But I've been studying, and I also studied some judo. And I had a friend there. We did some falls and stuff. And then I broke a board, a 1-inch pine board with my hand. And people were like, "Oh my gosh, how'd you do that?" kind of thing. And they said, "Okay, well, now we need you to, put some civilian clothes on here that you brought, and we're going to do, have you read with another actor." So they introduced me to Adam. They said, Burt, why don't you sit down to Adam here, and the two of you run some lines, kind of practice a little bit while we light everything, and we'll get going. And so I said, sure. I sat down next to Adam. Within 2 minutes, the two of us were laughing, and we never stopped laughing for more than 50 years. I mean, he and I got along like two peas in a pod. I mean, I found him to be incredibly funny, the most satirical person that I had ever met, with more innuendos than anybody I'd ever met. In fact, I will say this: when I later on in years that I did an animated show for Norm Prescott, who was a executive producer of a Batman animated feature. I remember that Norm Prescott has said to me about it. He says, "Your partner Adam is quite a character." I said, "Oh?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "The only person I ever met in my entire life that everything he said had a sexual connotation." And I said, "Yeah, that's actually true. But Adam and I got along phenomenally. And I think, chemistry is important. I really believe that chemistry is important. And he and I had a real chemistry. Whatever he did, I countered it almost in the opposite way. The way I look at it, all great comedy duos in history have had great contrast between them. Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy, even I mean Johnny Carson, Ed McMahon, great contrast. So I played up the contrast, and for me, growing up, I had a special, you see, I was kind of a loner kid growing up. I didn't have a lot of friends. I really only had one friend that I rarely got to see, and I was always by myself. And I used to daydream about being a superhero. And I mean, like you're fighting and this and that and all of this stuff. And so when I got to do this, I kind of just let go. It's like I couldn't care about a camera being there. I got to do this. Although they did not explain to me that this was anything to do with a comic book. They didn't use the words Batman or Robin. And even if they had, I wouldn't have understood because I never heard of the Batman comic book. Where I lived, there was only Superman comic books. But anyway, so I did this, and this is in civilian clothes. And then they said, okay, great, we're done. I said, thank you very much. They said, wait a minute, where are you going? I said, well, I guess I'm leaving now. No, 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 no. We have one more thing for you to do. Oh, okay. Well, what's that? Well, over on the other side of the sound stage, there's two wardrobe guys waiting in a trailer for you to get over there, and they're going to help you get dressed. And I kind of paused for a second. I said, well, I actually am fully capable of dressing myself. I really. They say, oh, no, 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 you don't understand. You don't understand. You just go over there and you'll see those two guys. There's a light on in the trailer. You go in there, they'll get you all set up here, and then you come back. I said, okay. So I walked. I mean, it seemed like I walked 3 city blocks to get to the other side of that soundstage. And they're gigantic and incredibly high and tall. So I get over there, I go in, and there's sure enough these two guys, and I look down, and there's no bed, but it looks like an extra long couch. I mean, it's got to be like 10 or 12 feet long. It's got all this stuff on it. And I looked down, and I kind of looked at them. I said, am I going to put some of this on? And they said, no, you're going to put all of it on. And I go, oh my gosh. And sure enough, they helped me get dressed into something that was the most uncomfortable thing that I'd ever tried on in my entire life. There wasn't one aspect that didn't pinch, pull, or itch, or whatever. Everything was uncomfortable. But I got into it, and by the time I got into it, and I was like, okay, now what do I do? I can't see down. I can't see left or right. I can't look up. All I can have is tunnel vision to see straight ahead. And they said, okay, well, go back to the set. So first I had to find the door, right? And I almost broke my neck because I couldn't see the step down. But I did turn around and I said to the guys, okay, famous last words, I have to admit, this is really very uncomfortable, I guess. But the good news is after another 15 or 20 minutes, I'll never have to wear this again. Famous last words. And then I hobbled all the way, most pinching, pulling. Oh my gosh, man was not built for tights. And I got over there. There was that guy, Adam West. And this time, my gosh, he's in this long cape and cowl. Again, you got to understand, I had never seen a Batman comic book. So dressed like that, I thought, well, maybe this is some kind of Shakespearean period piece or so. I didn't know what this was. And it's so funny because when you look at Adam through his mask, when you see his eyes through his mask, the mask makes his eyes look cross-eyed, which immediately makes you want to laugh. But there's no laughing there because you can't follow up scenes there because, money is tight and takes are valuable and stuff like that. So I had these lines that they had given me and I said them, whatever it was, I did it. And they said, okay, thank you. And I said, oh my gosh, I hobbled all the way back across the stage, got out of that costume. I got the heck out of there. And for the next 6 weeks, I guess after the first week, I started getting a phone call a week. And it was somebody from the studio that said something like, well, what's your shoe size? Oh, I have small foot, 7.5. I see. And then another week they call back, what's your hat size? Well, I don't know. I never wore a hat. Well, go get your head measured. Well, where do I go to get my head measured? I mean, it's like, they said, oh, no, you got to go to a tailor and this and that. And what had happened was that apparently some decisions had been made that I wasn't aware of. And after 6 weeks, I finally got a phone call from the agent who said, hey, listen, come on in. We're going to have you sign contracts. I said, great, fantastic. Now I can, because I didn't have any contract before, but now I'm going to be able to say, that I am formally signed to an agency. I can say I have a Hollywood agent. And I was thrilled. And I went over there, and it was quite a drive. But I got there and parked and everything, went up there, and they put me in just a little room by myself, and a table and a pen and a glass of water. And then there was this inch and a half thing of paper, ream of paper. And I looked at it and I said, this doesn't look like my agency contract. So I got up and opened the door and said, excuse me, I have the wrong things here. I'm supposed to have signing agency agreements. They said, no, you're signing the right thing. I said, oh, all right. I went back and looked at it, and it says 20th Century Fox on it. Well, I don't understand. And it was my contract to play Robin. You see, the studio thought that the agency told me that I had the role, and the agents thought the studio told me that I had the role. So 4 of the 6 weeks, I had the role and didn't know it, and just suffered every time I get a call or in between calls, wondering, did I get it? Did I get it?
The good news is you did get it.
I got it. And then the first day that I went to if I'm too long on this, you'd cut me off. But the first day I went to the set, the executive producer came over to me and said, Burt, glad to have you on board. He said, we interviewed 1,100 young guys over the last year and a half for this role. And I said, wow, 1,100. That's a tremendous amount. They said, yeah. He said, would you like to know why we selected you to play Robin and Dick Grayson? I said, yeah, I'd love to know. I had no idea. He said, forgetting television, what if there really was a Robin? I mean, what if you had somebody who was incredibly athletic, very quick, mentally quick, agile, somebody who could be an amazing sidekick? And we thought that, forgetting the acting now, that you, Burt Ward, you personally fit the role. And in our minds, we only want you to do 2 things on this show. Only 2 things we're asking you to do. One is be enthusiastic. Well, for me, that's like breathing, right? Enthusiastic. That's my middle name. And they said, the other thing is, we want you to be yourself. They said, we don't have to, quote, act, just be Burt. Because what you are is what Robin is. And I later found out that prior to me being told to go over to see the executive producer, that casting director had called over to the executive producer's office, got Mr. Dozier on the phone. He said, Robin just walked in here. He said, what are you talking about? He said, Robin. Which Robin? The character Robin. He just came in now. You mean the guy that we've been looking for a year and a half? He said, he's here now. We'll send him over. But I didn't find out that for years. And then years later, after I did the role and after I made appearances for almost 50 years, and I finally got my award on Hollywood Boulevard, to finally have my name, on Hollywood Boulevard, there's it's kind of like a tradition that whoever the person that won this award throws a little party, and kind of a thank you to the community and thank you to the people that are friends. And as a surprise to me, that was invited purposely as a surprise, Robert Butler, who was the director of the pilot episode, like 95 years old, he came to the ceremony. And I'll never forget him, because unlike the other directors, it was only like 5 days you work with them. But the pilot was 3 weeks. And he said to me, Burt, I have a story to tell you. I said, well, yes, Bob, what is it? He said, I know you don't know about this, but when you were hired, William Dozier came over to me and says, Bob, I need you to do me a favor. We just hired this kid, and I don't know if you're going to be able to work with him or not. I'd like you to go over there and talk with him, and I'd like you to call me back and tell me if you think you can work with him. And I remember, Richard, I remember him coming over to me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, the director is talking to me." It's like that's the God on the set. That's the director. And he talked to me for a few minutes, and this and this and that. And I told him that my whole, like my life and my dedication and this and that. He went back and he told me this in person. He said, I went back and I said, Dozier, he says, I have nothing but the best to say of him. In fact, in my opinion, there's nothing I'm going to tell him to do because it's not going to be as good as what he can come up with by himself. And I understood that Dozier was like stunned that anybody would say that to a director. And as a quick example of this, in the first episode with the Riddler, and the Riddler's girlfriend Moll, played by Jill St. John, that there was a scene, okay, that there's going to be an explosion, okay, and in this explosion, I'm tied down to a chair, and the whole thing is that Batman is supposed to break through a wall, okay, break through a wall, through the subway wall to rescue me, and they were supposed to have balsa wood breakaway set, meaning that of course you know what that is, but for your listeners, a breakaway set is something that everything looks real, but it can come apart really easy, and so they use what they call a magnesium charge. It makes a loud bang, but it's not got too much power, and it's enough to break things up. Well, who knew that the people that built the set did not build a breakaway set? They built a real set, and now there was no time. There was no time to build another set for 3 weeks. So what did the special effects guys do? They came in with 2 half sticks of dynamite and they nearly blew the entire soundstage down. And my arms were tied to my side. And the last thing I remember after the explosion, which I couldn't hear properly for about a week, was a big 2x4 came right down at my face. I blacked out because it landed on my nose and broke my nose. Off to the hospital. First of many trips to the hospital. But it was also during this first episode that I want to share with you, where we were supposed to drive up outside the museum, the museum where the Riddler was there with the museum curator, and he had a fake gun. It was really a cigarette lighter. And Batman and Robin looked at it and said, "Oh, he's robbing the museum." And we broke through. You know what I mean? We broke through the window to rescue him. And long story short, when we had gotten out of the Batmobile, they said, "Burt, okay, we're pulling up. Just get out of the Batmobile and run over." I said, "Okay." Well, I thought to myself, because they parked opposite of a place I was supposed to go, that instead of going through the door, I just stood up on the door and walked to the tail fin and jumped off. And they said, "No, cut. We didn't light for that." This is the director saying to me, "Burt, we thought you're coming out the door." I said, "Yeah, but why would I do that? Car's facing the other way. It's just easier for me to stand up on the seat and walk along that delicate tail fin, $150,000 car, which is like about 2 million today's prices, right?" And I walked right on the edge of that fiberglass thing. It could have ruined the paint job. He says, that was great. He says, "All right, everybody, get me the dolly, get me some plywood. We're gonna lay out of the track." And they did that. And it was through that show that I worked with him. And often he'd say to me, "Well, what would you do? What do you think, Burt?" And I sometimes had things, sometimes I didn't. But it really worked. And obviously it worked because our first show, when it aired, got a 55 share, meaning that in North America, including Mexico, Canada, and the United States, we had a 55 share audience. 55% of all the TVs were watching Batman. And in the 3 countries, only 45% were watching local, regional and network programs.
I think that they made a good decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that story is absolutely incredible. I mean, what you just laid out for us, that has never happened to me, I can tell you that.
Well, I don't think it's happened to any other actor in the history of television. But there's only one Burt Ward, and I'll tell you, we're kind of jumping to the more recent times. But what an honor it was to be one of your special guests at your Walk of Fame ceremony.
I know. I couldn't help it. My dear friend and and director of several features that I was lucky enough to be cast in, and not only did you cast me, but you cast my beautiful wife, Tracy. And in one of them, she was like,
she played your wife.
Yeah, I mean, it was phenomenal. We had such fun, and you're really a creative director. Like, we're ahead of your time because you didn't follow all the traditional stuff. You wrote a very funny script, and it like played with people's minds. Virgin High.
I'll tell you about Virgin High, because when I had made this movie, this one little movie for $40,000 called Assault of the Party Nerds, and my agent, the late great Fred Amzell, walked me over to 21st Century Films, which was Menachem Golan's company.
Right.
And we sat there, and he put in the VHS tape, and Menachem watched the first 5 minutes of the movie, stopped it, he said, "All right, kid, what do you want to do next?" And I said, "Well, I kind of got the idea to make a Fast Times at Ridgemont High at Catholic school." And that was a friend of mine had just he said, "I went to Catholic school, I want to make a movie." I said, "Well, I always liked Fast Times at Ridgemont High." We hadn't written the script yet. And he said, "What's it called?" And I just said, "Virgin High." He goes, "Oh, I made The Last American Virgin. Great title, Virgin High, we'll make the film." So then I had a huge $150,000 budget to make a movie on 35 millimeter. And we went about to casting it, and I was so thrilled when I found out that you were going to do the movie, because that was going to kind of complete the loop of me seeing you as Robin as a little kid, and here you were going to be playing our lead actress's dad in one of the lead roles. It wasn't, you did a cameo for me in the sequel, which we'll get to this. This is one of my favorite props of all time.
There you go.
I've saved this forever. That was the Hotter to the Collar when you played the Pope. But Virgin High, you played the character of Dick Murphy, and you also were such a great sport because you let us play off all the Batman stuff.
Of course,
You had one of your lines was "Holy Headlights."
Holy headlights!
And all that stuff. We had such a great time, and that movie is now, well, people love it. It's a cult classic. It's in its fourth issue on DVD. And I remember you would always be calling me. She goes, "Richard, Virgin High's on HBO again. It's on HBO again. They're playing it twice a day." Those type of things don't happen anymore with small films. And it's not like Batman, where you had 55% of America watching the show. But people don't realize that when we made Virgin High and it was on HBO, I think HBO was the only premium channel.
I think you're right.
There was like Turner and maybe USA, and then the networks. There was like 14 channels. So if you were on Saturday night on HBO, when I walked into a bar, people wanted to buy me drinks. I mean, I wasn't Robin. I wasn't Burt Ward. And for any of the audience that hasn't seen the movie, I was in the film as well. So yeah, Burt was kind of my nemesis. He was always getting in the way of me getting together with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
And going back to the Batman series, because you had told me some stuff that is mind blowing. I think. Like fighting with Bruce Lee. Well,
in case of Bruce Lee, you might not know this, but he was a neighbor of mine. We lived in the same condominium complex in West LA. And he and I were friends. And we actually sparred together, and I watched him with his training, and we talked a lot. We socialized. I remember going to dinner down to Chinatown with him and Linda and Brandon, who was only 6 months of age then. And of course, when in Chinatown, we had a fabulous dinner because Bruce had lived in Hong Kong for 10 years. He ordered every single thing that wasn't on the menu. And it was all fabulous, but I never heard of it, couldn't pronounce it, but it was wonderful. And a piece of trivia for your viewers and listeners is that, of course, we all know that Bruce Lee became by far the most famous cinematic martial artist that, in my opinion, will ever be. I'm not sure there'll ever be anybody that was as fabulous as he was. But a piece of trivia is that Bruce Lee's first filmed fight scene of his career was fighting me on Batman. He was cast as Kato in the Green Hornet by the same executive producer that was producing Batman. And what better way, because we came in as a mid-season replacement on ABC, and the Green Hornet was coming in as a fall new show on ABC. And what better way to kick it off, right, than to have an appearance on the number one and number two show in the world, because we were on twice a week, prime time, number one and number two in the world. Okay, there was something like, I think, some 400,000 people a week that were watching Batman. 400,000 worldwide.
Probably millions. Probably not 400,000. 400 million.
Could
probably.
be. You're right. Could be. Maybe it was just U.S. Whatever it was huge numbers. And but Bruce and I used to spar together, and he actually he taught me a few things that really very impressive, and was really a nice guy. He was cocky. Yes, he was cocky, but never in a rude way, in a funny way, in a kind of, in some ways, reminded me of Adam West. I mean, in a personality that was just kind of a fun-loving. As serious as he was with the training and the fighting, he personally was a very happy-go-lucky guy.
It's not bragging if you can prove it. I mean, he was Bruce Lee.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And that's real. Let me tell you something. He trained 8 hours a day, every single day, including Christmas Day. Never missed 8 hours a day. And his regimen of training was unbelievable. And he was incredibly quick. Incredibly quick. And we talked about it, and I said, he could tell. He once had a demonstration match with at the time the world champion black belt karate guy. Okay, and he told the guy that, I'm going to throw a right punch, and you see if you can block it. Now, he purposely pulled it not to hit him in the face, but telling the world champion what he's going to do, and it was so fast the guy couldn't even block it.
Whoa!
Oh, he was incredibly fast, incredibly quick, and he stressed that intelligence. He said, all the training physically, the most important thing is the mind. Absolutely most important thing. And one of the great things that he taught me in terms of martial arts is that when you have a moves or a series of moves, what you need to do is to simplify, simplify, simplify. And that's where you get to tremendous speed, because you simplify it to where you get the most effect with the least amount of effort and the least amount of time. And anyway, for martial artists would love to hear that, because that is one of the keys to Bruce Lee's tremendous speed and success.
And there was, the roster of guest stars on Batman, is unbelievable. What are the most memorable ones for you?
I guess the ones I work with the most, right? Because you work with them often. Cesar Romero, the Joker, Julie Newmar, Catwoman. And let's see here, Burgess Meredith, the Penguin, Frank Gorshin, the Riddler, Victor Buono, but not a well-known name, but a tremendous actor, played King Tut. We had
Lee Merriweather.
Howard Duff and Ida Lupino. We had just even Liberace. He played two characters, the great Shondell, the great piano player, and then his other character was called Fingers. I was like a kid in a candy store, because there is a huge difference, in my opinion, of today's actors and the actors that I met. The actors that I met were truly, truly what you envision Hollywood to be. So incredibly professional. Always on time, knew every line, never had a teleprompter, none of that. It was just like, and they were like a finely tuned instrument. And it's like, wow, really, really impressive.
And at your star ceremony, I got to take a really great picture with Lee Merriweather from the Batman and Robert movie.
She played in our Batman movie.
Yeah,
she played
Catwoman.
What a sweet lady. And she does a great Russian accent. Just everybody was so great, to work with. And it just is, for me, I was in awe. of these people because every person that came on that set, one of these guest stars, I either had watched on television many, many times or seen in the movies. I mean, they were all familiar faces, you know?
What they saw in you as Robin, which is interesting because they asked you to play yourself, just be Burt. When I got to work with you as a director, and even now, because we recently, I think I told you, we released a limited edition Blu-ray of Virgin High and Hot Under the Collar. And in Virgin High, you're one of my leads, playing
Right.
my nemesis, and this hilarious cameo with you as the Pope in
Yeah.
in Hot Under the Collar.
Right.
You are one hell of an actor. I watched, I was almost too close to it, but when I watched Virgin High again, that was like an amazing character you created. And then, as the Pope, I was just thinking, oh, I'm going to hang out with my friend Burt for a day. It's a cameo. He's doing me a favor, and it'll be so much fun. But when I watched it again and we did the comic, I mean, you played the Pope. You became papal. You're a fantastic actor. And I have to ask you, because I don't know if it was the rumor mill or what, but is it true that that they wanted you for The Graduate?
Oh, let me tell you, there's a real story there. While I was doing Batman, a producer named Larry Terman came to me and said, Burt, he said, I'm doing a small film here at Fox. He said, I'd love for you to have the lead role. And I said, oh, I'd love to do it. He says, and I can time this so it's right during your hiatus, the period that you have off when you're not filming Batman. And I said, oh, I'd love to do it. I hadn't read the script or anything. I just would love to do it, right? And I figured, and it looked like I was going to get it. I mean, the network, it wasn't the network, it was the studio Fox that said, well, we don't see a problem. You're not doing this for another studio. This is right in Fox, And I said, oh, I'd love to do, oh my gosh, just to do a role like this. But ABC killed it. ABC killed it. And I'll tell you why. Okay. Because at the time that Batman came out, ABC was not a broadcast network. It was a syndicated network. And between the success of Batman and Bewitched, that made ABC the third network. And they didn't want any dilution of my character. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, in retrospect, having watched The Graduate, right, I could see where, the role where he gets involved with his girlfriend's mother, you know what I mean? That could be a bit controversial. But the point of it is that I couldn't do it. And I got to tell you, for years after that, every, 6 or 8 months, I would see the director and the producer, like at, restaurant or something. And that Larry Terman every single time said to me, Burt, I always wanted you for that role. So when they couldn't get me, they got Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, I mean, he was their second choice. He did okay.
It was. Of course, he became fantastic and great actor, and I met him. He's a really nice guy. But the point was,
Burt, is it because ABC wouldn't let you out?
they didn't want any they didn't want any competition. They didn't want to see me in another role.
And they had the power to do that, obviously.
Oh, because they threatened the studio.
Yeah, and also, and I think what you brought up, Burt, that it was not a wholesome character, so it wasn't really going to add to your image. You're going to have to roll around with Anne Bancroft and Catherine Ross. I mean,
yeah,
that's hazard pay. I mean, you'd rather get blown up in a soundstage.
I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. I'm not sure I wouldn't have enjoyed the other.
I'm joking.
So it just shows you that you can win unbelievably great stuff, and you can lose unbelievably great stuff. And people ask me all the time, well, Burt, gosh, your role is so iconic and stuff like that. And I know you've done it for films, but how do you feel about the fact that, in some ways you were so typecast? And I said, look, here's the way I look at it. As an actor, my glass is full. Now, I could have it full from a bunch of different roles, or I could have it filled primarily from one role, but a lot of additions of other roles. And I said, either way, it's full. And that's the way I looked at it. I never missed out on anything. Okay. I mean, I missed out on that one role, but okay. But, playing Robin was actually even better.
Absolutely. And then for us, then I had one of my incredible great honors go from being a kid in New York City, being held up to see you on stage, to directing you in movies, and then being in your wedding party and to be at your
There
wedding.
you go.
You
And that was wonderful.
When
Oh
we
yeah,
got
you know, if you remember, we had it out on a boat.
I do
We
remember, and I remember.
rented a cruise ship, a small cruise ship, and Tracy wrote the wedding for this poor minister to read. I mean, the thing had been 45 minutes, and the wedding ceremony was like 3 hours in the sun on the boat. And she married everybody everybody on the boat was married into our family. And right after that, okay, she said to me, "Oh my God, I loved it. Let's do it again. Let's do it again." I said, "No, Tracy, no, we're not doing it again. Another
But
3 hours. No, you have people jumping off into the water. You can't do that."
But we did. We drank a lot of RC Cola and ate a lot of Arby's sandwiches.
That's right. Arby's roast beef sandwiches and RC Colas were two of her companies, and they catered, and it was delicious. It was fun. We had different kind of countries represented, and we had, a magician, and, all kinds of entertainment.
When I got to make Party Nerds 2, then I got to have Mr. and Mrs. Ward in the movie.
Yeah, you go.
And and I also got to have some of Tracy's songs in there, which is always great.
He talks about that every time your name comes up. Richard, he's so wonderful. He put my song in his movie. I'll never forget that. I can never thank him enough. I mean, he really appreciates it, and I do too. And I had a great time doing your stuff. Of course, she has some funny stories that she tells friends about how, while waiting for the shot to start, I dozed off. Okay, and you came and got her, and here I was on a bed with an actress who was in a dominatrix outfit, and yet
we filmed it. You were snoring. We filmed you snoring. Somewhere we have a clip of you snoring.
Oh my gosh!
But we also got to talk about what you and your great wife Tracy have been doing lately. First, when you were running the Great Dane Rescue, saving hundreds of dogs, of thousands of dogs.
1,500.
1,500 Great Danes. And now with Gentle Giants and your dog food, which is extending dogs' lives and giving all kinds of charity.
We make
dogs.
It's called Gentle Giants. We actually don't take any salary from it. We've never taken a penny. This is all about what we consider our charity, our life's work. We love precious pets. And, people love their animals. In today's world, just in the U.S. alone, there's more than 80 million dogs and 67 million households. And one of our customers, we just filmed a commercial that we're going to put out about a month ago. His dog has been eating our food for 17 years. Gentle Giants is the name of it. 17 years they've been eating our food. And his dog is 31 and a half years old. On January 3rd of 2026, assuming that dog is still alive and he seems healthy, he'll be 32 years old.
What you two do are great. And the other thing that I really find beautiful is that your relationship with Adam and how it endured and how wonderful it was and all of the things you did in honor of Adam when he passed away. And we came, the kids and I came when you did that memorial in City Hall, and we had the bat signal in downtown LA. But that relationship endured, and you stayed friends and buddies and crime fighters till the end.
Tracy points out to me something that, you don't always notice things. You know what I'm saying, Richard, in life? We're all sometimes so occupied with what's in front of us. We don't always notice everything. And the last film that Adam and I did together, Warner Brothers animated features, we did two of them. This one involved William Shatner. Okay. I mean, here you imagine you got Star Trek and Batman, the two most iconic TV shows in history where the stars are working together. But we all did voiceover recordings for animated characters. And I was there for mine first. They, for whatever reason, they wanted to be able to have everything clean so they could edit the way they wanted to. So I was right near the finishing of my stuff, almost done. And I saw Adam come in, I'm in a little recording room, but then there's a larger room, and then there's the place where the people that operate the equipment are. But then there's a dressing kind of area, and I saw Adam come into the dressing area, and Tracy went to say hi to him, and so anyway, I finished, and I came in, and I said, "Hey, Adam," and we kind of hugged each other, and he said, Burt, it's great seeing you. I haven't seen you for a while, and he went to do his work, and Tracy said to me later when we left, he said, when I went in to see Adam when he came in, and he looked up, and I can see him watching you, Burt. I saw tears in his eyes. And it's like, oh my God, Tracy, why didn't you tell me? I didn't know. And we really had a special love and friendship for each other, really, really special. And I don't know how else to say it. The chemistry when he would play the great character of Bruce Wayne, who was like debonair and like Mr. Hollywood, Mr. Glamour, with a deep, booming, slow talking voice. I would be quickly talking like this to counteract it. And people love the opposites. They love that opposites. And it's so funny, a kind of an interesting thing, in 120 episodes, in 3 years of filming, 32 different directors, not one time in 120 episodes did I ever have a director tell me how to say a line. I mean, and you would expect that they would. I mean, you would expect, that they're directing it, their vision. But Adam and our characters were so pure in you know what I mean? There was this instant chemistry, and it's so funny because people would come on the set to, who were friends of the producers and stuff like that. And even when Adam and I weren't performing, we're just standing there. They'd see the two of us together, and people start laughing. And I try to, why are they laughing? But it was this chemistry that Adam and I guess, exuded in our relationship together that made people laugh.
It also could have been the censors that I think had to change your wardrobe.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, what it was, you have to understand, when something gets really big, everybody wants to put their 2 cents in. Okay, so there was this psychiatrist. Okay, that he came out and said that Batman represented a wish dream of two homosexuals. And people interviews would ask me about that. I said, wait a minute, come on. What's so strange about two guys that run around wearing tights and live together? I mean, come on, right?
Yeah, that's normal.
But one of the groups that decided to put their 2 cents in was the Catholic Legion of Decency. Never heard of it. But apparently they felt that Robin had an unnatural bulge in his shorts. And they were determined to do something about it. On the other hand, Adam was, for whatever reason, totally flat in the front. And I used to kid Adam, say, Adam, look, in order for us to look more balanced, you need to take some Turkish towels and stuff them in your undershorts. Well, Turkish towels are one of the biggest towels in the world. I mean, right? But it was a kind of humor that Adam and I threw at each other. But so what happened is, long story short, I thought it was a joke until the producers called me and said, Burt, it's not a joke. ABC is very upset about it. They don't want to, the Catholic religion and the Catholics represent a major, audience here in the United States. We can't have them upset with us. So what do you want me to do? They said, well, we're going to have wardrobe, see what we can do. So these guys in wardrobe, okay, who were quite characters. I mean, I would describe them as light in their loafers. Okay, they loved the opportunity to try to fit me with any god awful contraption that they could come up with, right? And sure enough, they came up with all these things. None of it worked. None of it worked.
They don't call you the boy wonder for nothing.
Yeah, no, they'll tell you whatever. Anyway, so finally they found a solution. They had a doctor that prescribed me pills, and they would have me take these pills before work And I took them for about 3 days. And then I really got worried that maybe this could have some kind of permanent effect. Maybe I could never have children, or maybe make me sterile. I mean, who knows what it was, but I got worried about it. So I stopped taking the pills. And what I ended up doing to resolve the problem was using my cape to cover. Now, there are some additional things that happened here that I'm going to share with you, which you guys don't know. There was an episode shortly after this whole escapade went on called Londinium Larcenies, which was a three-parter, the only three-parter we did. It was going to be released in the UK as a feature film. And instead of, there's always the villain, okay? But the villain has henchmen, and usually these big tough guys, and there's always these fight. In this case, there were not henchmen, there were henchwomen. And they were very beautiful and very young, okay? And the word about this issue was all over the set. Everybody was, you turn around, you see some people giggling, and you know what they're giggling about, right? You know what they're giggling about. So what happened there when we started to film the scenes? Well, there's several scenes where these girls are grabbing me like two on each arm, and they're pulling me, and we're wrestling around, and they kept intentionally rubbing against me. I guess trying to get a rise out of me, right? and so it was like, oh my God, now I'm really going to create a problem for myself.
Right.
And I managed to get through it, but it was parts where I was actually not fist fighting, but I was really pulling rough, because there would have been no way that this would have passed the censors. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And they thought it was the funniest thing. They just laughed. They loved it. They're like, oh my God. And they knew that I was suffering.
Another rough day at the office.
Yes, right. Some people just want to make it hard for you. I guess, I don't know.
Guess they wanted to make it hard for you.
If crime fighting was easy, we'd all do it.
That's right. There you go.
Well, you are my favorite crime fighter. You're one of my favorite people in the world, and I'm so grateful. Bobby and I are so grateful that you took the time to be on our show. So thank you so much. Thank you to Tracy. Everyone should check out Gentle Giant's dog food. It is the best. Burt, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Burt Ward.
Thank you. And as we said on Batman, to the Batmobile.
Absolutely. Wow. And with that,
Burt, thank you, man.
Robert,
Okay.
Burt, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes another amazing, fantastic, wham, pow, pop. What else? Zowie. Episode. Kapowie. Episode
Splat
of.
and Zong.
What else? I'll take it.
Splat and Zong.
Splat and Zonk episode of the Party Nerds Podcast. We will catch you next time. Same bat time, same bat channel.